In 2018, two NASA scientists published a paper that the scientific community mostly ignored, not because it was wrong, because it was too uncomfortable to think about. The paper was called the Silurian Hypothesis, and its central question was simple. If an intelligent civilization had existed on Earth millions of years before us, would we even be able to find it? The answer was no. We wouldn't find a single trace. And that changes everything we think we know about being alone on this planet. Here's what most people don't realize about the fossil record. We've only found fossils of about 0.1% of all species that ever lived on Earth. The other 99.9%, gone. No trace, as if they never existed. Now think about what humans have built. Cities, power plants, roads, satellites, plastic. We've changed the chemistry of the atmosphere, the composition of the oceans, the temperature of the planet. If we disappeared tomorrow, how long would it take for all of that to vanish? Scientists have actually calculated this. Most surface structures would be gone within 10,000 years. Plastic breaks down within 1,000,000 years. Even our deepest mines and tunnels would be unrecognizable within 10 million years. And 10 million years is nothing. Earth is 4.5 billion years old. If there was a civilization here 60 million years ago, before the asteroid killed the dinosaurs, we would find absolutely nothing. No buildings, no roads, no technology. The geological record would have erased every single trace. This is the Silurian Hypothesis, named after the prehistoric era, not because anyone claims a civilization existed then, but because it forces us to ask, how would we know if one did? And the honest answer is, we probably wouldn't. But here's where it gets really strange, because there are some things in the geological record that scientists can't fully explain. In 1966, geologist Claire Patterson discovered something alarming. The concentration of lead in human bones today is 1,000 times higher than in ancient humans from 500 years ago, and far higher than in any pre-industrial period. That's expected. We burned leaded gasoline for decades, but Patterson also found something nobody expected: thin spikes of unusual chemical concentrations buried deep in ancient geological layers from millions of years ago. Nobody claimed these were signs of ancient civilization. The explanations were natural: volcanic activity, asteroid impacts, but the pattern was strange enough that it made some scientists wonder. Subscribe right now if you want to know what else is buried in the geological record, because what comes next is the part that nobody in science wants to talk about openly. The ocean floor is covered in something called polymetallic nodules, potato-sized lumps of metal that form extremely slowly, about 1 centimeter every million years. In 1968, researchers discovered something impossible inside some of these nodules: shark teeth, whale bones, and other organic material that should have dissolved millions of years ago. The nodules had grown around them, which means the organic material had somehow been preserved long enough for the metal to encapsulate it completely. That alone was strange. But then they found something else inside a small number of nodules: perfectly spherical objects, metallic, between 1 and 3 millimeters in diameter, with a layered internal structure that looked almost manufactured. Almost. Scientists concluded they were likely cosmic spherules, micrometeorites that fell from space and got incorporated into the nodules as they formed. And that's probably exactly what they are. But the Silurian Hypothesis asks a different question. Not, what are these? But rather, if an ancient civilization had existed and left behind small metallic artifacts, what would those artifacts look like after 60 million years of geological processing? Probably a lot like that. Here's the thing about intelligence on Earth. We assume it's unique to humans, but intelligence has evolved independently at least 7 times on this planet, in mammals, birds, octopuses, and others. The octopus shares no common ancestor with vertebrates for over 500 million years. Yet it uses tools, it solves puzzles, it recognizes individual human faces. It evolved its intelligence completely independently from us. So the question isn't whether intelligence can evolve on Earth. It clearly can. The question is whether it had enough time to do so before us, and what happened to it if it did. Earth has been habitable for approximately 4 billion years. Complex animal life has existed for about 600 million years. Humans have been around for 300,000 years. Technological civilization, roughly 10,000 years. That means complex animal life existed for 599.7 million years before technological civilization appeared. In all that time, in all those hundreds of millions of years, is it really impossible that something else became intelligent? Something that rose, built, flourished, and then disappeared, leaving no trace in the geological record. The Permian period ended 252 million years ago in the worst mass extinction in Earth's history. 96% of all species died. Before that extinction, during the late Permian, there were animals called cynodonts, mammal-like reptiles with complex social behavior, warm blood, and proportionally large brains for their time. Some paleontologists have speculated that if the Permian extinction hadn't happened, if those creatures had been given another 50 or 100 million years, intelligence might have evolved from them long before primates ever appeared. But the Siberian Traps volcanic eruption ended that possibility, which raises an uncomfortable question. Maybe it already had. Maybe those 2 million years between the first volcanoes and the final extinction were enough. Maybe there was something before the Great Dying that we'll never find, because the geological catastrophe that killed them also destroyed every trace they left behind. The carbon isotope record from the Permian Triassic boundary shows a massive spike in atmospheric carbon dioxide. We know this was caused by volcanic activity, but it's also exactly the chemical signature you would expect from a civilization burning fossil fuels for thousands of years before being wiped out by the very climate change they triggered. That's probably a coincidence. The volcanic explanation is solid and well supported, but probably is doing a lot of work in that sentence. Here's what makes the Silurian Hypothesis genuinely disturbing for scientists. Not the idea that a civilization existed, but what it implies about our own future. If an intelligent species could rise to technological civilization and then disappear so completely that no evidence remains after 10 million years, then our entire existence could vanish just as completely. Everything we've built, every book ever written, every city, every satellite, every piece of technology, gone, as if it never happened. In the context of geological time, 10 million years from now, future beings might dig through the rock layers where our civilization exists today and find only a thin chemical anomaly, a slight spike in certain isotopes, a layer of microplastics compressed into sedimentary rock. That would be us. The entire human story compressed into a centimeter of rock that some future geologist might not even notice. The Silurian Hypothesis doesn't claim a pre-human civilization existed. Its authors, Adam Frank and Gavin Schmidt, are serious scientists at NASA and the University of Rochester. They're not making a conspiracy theory. They're asking a scientific question, given what we know about how evidence is preserved over geological time. How confident can we really be that we're the first? Their answer, not very confident at all. There's one more piece of this puzzle that most people have never heard of. In 1972, workers at a uranium mine in Gabon, West Africa, discovered something that should have been impossible: a natural nuclear fission reactor, not a deposit of uranium, a place where, about 2 billion years ago, a sustained nuclear chain reaction had occurred naturally, underground, for hundreds of thousands of years. Scientists call it the Oklo phenomenon. And the explanation is natural. The specific concentration of uranium-235 at that time, combined with water acting as a moderator, created the conditions for spontaneous fission. It happened naturally, without any intelligent intervention. But here's what's strange about Oklo. The reaction was self-regulating. When it got too hot, the water boiled away. The reaction slowed. The water returned. The reaction resumed. It cycled for hundreds of thousands of years. The physics of this self-regulation are almost elegant, almost designed. Again, natural, probably. But the Silurian Hypothesis asks, if you were trying to find evidence of ancient technology in the geological record, what would you look for? Controlled, sustained energy reactions, chemical anomalies, unusual isotope ratios. Oklo has all of those things, and it happened 2 billion years ago. long before complex animal life even existed. So it's not evidence of ancient civilization. The timing is wrong by over 1 billion years, but it demonstrates something important. The geological record can preserve evidence of sustained, controlled energy reactions. The chemistry survives. The isotope signatures survive, which means if something similar had happened, something artificial rather than natural, 60 million years ago during the late Cretaceous, we might actually be able to find it. And we haven't. That's the honest answer. We haven't found it. We've looked at the geological record carefully. The anomalies we find have natural explanations. The Silurian Hypothesis remains exactly that, a hypothesis. But here's the final twist that keeps me thinking about this. We've been searching for signs of extraterrestrial intelligence for decades. We point telescopes at distant stars and listen for radio signals. We analyze the chemistry of exoplanet atmospheres for signs of industrial pollution. We're looking out there for what might be 1 billion light years away. We've spent almost no time looking down into our own geological record for what might have been here. Not because scientists think it's impossible, but because the question is so uncomfortable that most researchers don't want to be associated with it. Adam Frank, one of the paper's authors, said in an interview, "We're not saying it happened. We're saying we should actually check. And we haven't really checked." That's the part that gets me. We haven't really checked. 4.5 billion years of Earth history. Complex animal life for 600 million of those years. Intelligence evolving independently multiple times, and we've spent almost no resources systematically looking for chemical or isotopic signatures of pre-human technology in the geological wreck, because the idea is uncomfortable, because if something was here before us and left no trace, then we might leave no trace either. And that's not a comforting thought for a species that likes to think of itself as the pinnacle of Earth's story. Maybe we're not the first chapter. Maybe we're not even close. Next week, we're going even deeper into what the geological record is actually hiding. Things that have natural explanations. Things that probably have natural explanations. And a few things that nobody has explained yet. Subscribe so you don't miss it. We've been looking at the wrong place. The answer might be right beneath our feet.